Aphex Twin, although that's not his real name, is a very interesting musician, at least in my opinion. He's one of the most influential musicians in the electronic genre, and one of the most famous autistic musicians of all time. I don't have word that he's diagnosed, but from what I've read, it's a safe bet. Listening to his music is all the more fun when you know that such an odd guy made it. I really enjoy listening to him, and today, I'm going to be going over his studio albums. For the sake of this video not being an hour long, EPs will be excluded, although I'll mention notable ones in case any of you want to check him out later. Also, while he has released under multiple aliases, only those under the Aphex Twin name will be considered. And for simplicity's sake, I'll refer to him by his given name, which you will find out momentarily. Let's cut to the chase. Richard David James was born on August 18th, 1971 in Limerick, Ireland, a suburb of Haiku, Ireland. According to him, he was named after a stillborn older brother. There isn't concrete evidence of this, though, and this is going to be a recurring trend with claims he's made about his life. I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt, since having a stillborn older brother would be a pretty strange thing to lie about. Richard's parents were Welsh, and soon after his birth, they moved the family to Cornwall, England. This means that Richard has ties to half of the historic Celtic kingdoms. From an early age, Richard was interested in making sounds. He said that he would open up the family piano and play with the strings inside. This makes sense given his surroundings. Richard grew up in the Cornish town of Lander, and judging by the photos I could find, it seems like a pretty calm place. It's understandable that he would want to fill in the gaps in the surrounding sound. He said about growing up in Cornwall, "I liked growing up there, being cut off from the city and the rest of the world." In regard to his love of sounds, he would later say, "It is all about sound, but people forget that. They think, oh, I want to hear a nice tune, but what you're actually saying is you want to hear the combination of frequencies that make you feel a certain way. And more excitingly, it's about finding out the new ones." While reducing music to just sounds might sound like a pretty soulless way of composing, I actually find it pretty interesting. I think it's fun to experiment with the building blocks of songs and see what weird stuff you can create. When he was 14, Richard began making music. The popular form of electronic music in Cornwall at the time was acid house, a genre that sounds exactly what you would imagine it to sound like. He was drawn to the instrumental nature of electronic music, finding lyrics too restrictive due to the fact that words mean something concrete, whereas sounds have multiple meanings. During his late teens, he began performing at raves, many of which took place outside of traditional clubs. Cornwall's Gwenap Pit was one such location. Instead of money, entry fees were given in the form of weed, which I imagine would make it quite difficult to get out of the pit. It was at one of these parties that he supposedly lost his virginity. I don't know what to make of that. Throughout this period, Richard completed an engineering degree, which for an electronic musician is an extremely useful qualification. Eventually, he caught the attention of Mighty Force Records, who signed him to a contract in 1991 while backstage at a concert during which he was tripping on acid. Smart move on his part. If the label ever tried to screw him over, he could just have the contract voided. Now that he was properly signed, Richard's prolific output became easier to measure. Over the next 4 years, he would release 4 EPs: Analog Bubble Bath, Analog Bubble Bath Volume 2, Didgeridoo, and Xylem Tube. Those are only the ones he released under the Aphex Twin name. He released the Pac-Man EP as Power Pill, and the Joyrex J4 and Joyrex J5 EPs as AFX. Finally, on November 9th, 1992, Richard released his first album as Aphex Twin, Selected Ambient Works 85 to 92. To save time moving forward, I'll just call this album Saw. Go away, Jigsaw. As the title might imply, Saw consisted of tracks that Richard had recorded at various points from 1985 to 1992, making it more of a compilation album of sorts. Saw remains a defining album in electronica, an extremely vague genre categorizing electronic music meant to be listened to while sitting down instead of while dancing. It's also been categorized as IDM, or intelligent dance music. This is a genre of music categorized by vast experimentation, although Richard himself has said he hates the term, saying, "It's really nasty to everyone else's music. It makes me laugh," things like that. I don't use names, I just say I like something or I don't. He would also discuss his writing process and how all of his songs were made at home, saying, "Yeah, I can't do music anywhere else. It's got to be in the bedroom, basically. You get to do tracks in the nude, and if you're working in the studio, you just can't do that. It's not really practical. It's also really just removing it from any sort of pressure as much as possible, and just making it more personal, basically. I could never handle doing music in the studio. It's too cold. I'm sure I could do it, but I just wouldn't want to do it. I just like doing it at home." I should probably start talking about the actual music now. The opening track, Extal, is one of the most danceable songs on the record. It has an upbeat melody, pulsing rhythm, and it makes you want to put your hands in the air. Despite that, it also sounds chill in a way. I can't fully explain it. Ages Paulus has easily the sickest groove on the entire album. Listening to it without nodding your head is simply impossible. Green Calx has a melody that I can only describe as blorping. This is clearly one of the songs that Richard wrote while he was on acid. Tha is a sprawling 9-minute song that doesn't really stray from the same simple structure, but it's absolutely hypnotic. It's a great song to lose track of time to. We Are the Music Makers is a song that would be right at home in a spy movie with its grooving bass and funky beat. It also has a spoken word sample from Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, which is the closest thing to lyrics on the entire album. This album was as good of a first impression that he could have made, and there are still many people who think that this is the best album he's ever done. Following it up would always be a challenge. Richard decided the best way to do this was to release a complete mindfuck of an album that is Selected Ambient Works Volume 2, released on March 7th, 1994. Technically, the follow-up was Surfing on Sine Waves, an album that he released as Polygon Window, but as I said in the beginning, I'm only going out over albums he released as Aphex Twin. Do still check out that record, though. To save time, I'll just call Selected Ambient Works Volume 2 Saw 2. Really? Back again? Saw 2 was an album that surprised even Richard's most dedicated fans. Let's start with the length. At a behemoth 2.5 hours long, this is an album that I've never been able to listen to in one go. And that's not even talking about the style of music. While Saw had its calmer moments, it was still an album that you could bop your head to. Saw 2 has almost no percussion, instead focusing on dreamlike synthesizers playing at a calm pace, for 2.5 hours. It's a shame he didn't release this album today, or it would have made a killing on the ASMR market. As terrifying as I might have made this album sound, I absolutely love it. Like, a lot. I described it as a mindfuck, but to be honest, it's more of a mind hug. I don't know exactly how to refer to the songs. None of them officially have titles, only numbers. But since the album booklet has photos correlating to each song, there have been widely accepted fan-given titles, although Spotify just has the numbers. I'll refer to both. The opener, Number 1 Cliffs, is a cheerful, calm song that immediately lets you know that this isn't an album anyone will be playing at a club anytime soon, unless it's a meditation club, but I digress. Number 3, Rhubarb, is the most listened to song on the album. And for good reason. The melody is perfectly melancholy without ever being full-on sad. Listening to it made me think back to all my happiest memories, many of them with people I haven't seen in years and probably will never see again. It has over 10 million views on YouTube, and if you ever feel sad, go read the comments section. Blue Calx is the one song on the album to have a proper title. It has the same track underneath everything, and on top of that is layered a really calming melody. Number 19, Stone in Focus, is another song with a good YouTube presence. Someone uploaded it alongside a looped clip of a Japanese monkey in a hot spring. I don't know what the song has to do with monkeys, but it's a cute looking one, so I don't mind. This song was left off the CD edition due to it pushing the album over the maximum amount length. Yet another advantage of streaming over physical media. Please don't hate me, purists. With his first 2 albums, Richard proved to listeners that he was a master of both ends of the musical spectrum. He could make music for getting lit to, and he could make music for self-reflection. Let's see what he does next on his follow-up, I Care Because You Do, released the very next year. This is the album I hear talked about the least. I know my experience with the Aphex Twin fandom isn't universal, but still. Part of that is because it had the misfortune of being released two absolute masterpieces, Saw 2, and the other one, which I'll touch on later. This was Richard's last album recorded mostly with analog synthesizers before he moved on to using digital ones, and as a result, it's sort of a farewell to the first half of his career. As a farewell, it's a pretty great one, a swan song, if you will. This was also the first album where he began using his own made-up musical scales. As he said, "I've been using my own scales for quite a long time, since Selected Ambient Works Volume 2. It's got some scales I made myself where I just make my own tuning, basically, and compose from that. I've got a weird balance problem as a human being, like I'm dizzy, and it's something to do with that. I'll fall over sometimes just walking to walls, things like that. There's something wrong with my brain, it doesn't work properly." The opener, Acrid Avid Jam Shred, an anagram of his full name, has a beat that reminds me of Massive Attack. It's a pretty calm track, and it would be a good song to listen to while going on a walk through an abandoned warehouse. The rest of the song has a good mix of synthetic strings and zapping. Wax the Nip is an oddly titled song, but the music more than wakes up for the disturbing mental image. The percussion is pounding, and while it contrasts with the somewhat euphoric-sounding synths, it works really well. Ventolin has a pretty grating sine wave sound along with blaring beeps, but I don't really mind them. It works well with the effect he's going for. It's a really uneasy sounding song, and yet I find myself feeling easy when I listen to it. I will admit that I had to turn my volume down when it came on, though. Some songs hurt the ears more than the others. Alberto Balsam is easily the standout track, and Spotify seems to agree with me. It's a perfect mix of head bopping and calming. One of the drum samples he uses sounds like pulling a sticker off a surface, and I like it quite a bit. It's always cool to hear what sounds he gets with his equipment. Around this time, Richard released the Expert Knob Twiddlers album with Mike Paradinas, under the Mike and Rich name. Not longer after that, he would put out the Richard D. James album. A wise man once said, "Quality over quantity." He must have been referring to this album. 32 minutes and 51 seconds. That's as much time as it takes to listen to Richard D. James' album. You could listen to this almost 5 times in the time it takes you to listen to Saw 2 just once. This was Richard's first album with the full freedom of digital equipment, and it starts a new era of his discography off with a bang. If we're judging each album by what percentage of runtime is wasted, then this has to be his best one. He actually had an ungodly amount of original material written for this. When asked how many songs he had and how he decided which ones to use, he said, "For this one, I had about 200 songs. It was quite hard. It's always hard, because I never know what to release, basically, so I get my mates to listen to it and try to see what they like. I don't usually end up putting out my favorite tracks. I don't reckon people will get into those. Not that I care, I just want them to buy the record so I can get some money." The opener, 4, is a great example of how Aphex can combine a calming synth melody with a really hectic programmed drum line. And this song can make you feel both ends of the spectrum depending on what mood you're already in. Fingerbib is a really retro-sounding song. It reminds me of arcade video games. I can't explain it, but it just does. It's very calming and puts a smile on my face. Goon Gumpas is only 2 minutes long, but it's a majestic 2 minutes. There are sweeping synth waves, and it's just really beautiful. The main melody sounds like it's played on a violin finger style. Just when you think Richard is getting too into physical instruments, though, he comes in with this 8-bit melody that somehow mixes in perfectly. Whenever I say this song title, I picture Super Mario. Yellow Calcs is the third and final song in the Calcs series of songs, and it's a worthy finale. The programmed drums are wild and sound at times like a crank being turned, while the melody over them is peaceful. Doing two completely different things can sometimes make them mix perfectly. don't know what to say about this album. One thing I do know about this album is that it wasn't supposed to be released in the first place. Richard claims to have accidentally left a hard drive full of material on an airplane, and figuring it would be leaked sooner or later, decided to release the backed up files as an album. The songs here range heavily in age, with the oldest having been written about 8 years prior. Richard has never released a bad album, but this is the album I've found has the most detractors. Stereo Gum had it as his lowest rated album, and yet when I referred to it as his worst on Instagram, I had a lot of people criticizing me in the comments. What do I think about it? Honestly, it definitely feels like a bunch of tracks thrown together with no consideration, and the quality varies pretty heavily. At 30 songs and 103 minutes, it's beaten out only by Saw 2 in terms of length, but it's still a fun album to listen to. When asked about its strange title, he said, "It's up to everyone to make their own interpretation." Very helpful. Vordhosben is my second favorite song on the album. I'll tell you later what my favorite song is. The drum beat is wild and off-kilter, and I'd like to see someone try and breakdance to this. Despite this, it manages to have a melody that gets stuck in your head. On the opposite end of the spectrum, Bibdon Chord is a nice calm song. The combination of percussion and synthesizers makes you want to close your eyes and nod your head. 54 Cymru Beats is another hectic song, although it's a little easier to dance to. Believe me, I tried. Now I should tell you about my favorite song on this record, a song that's on my Mount Rushmore of Aphex Twin tracks. A little tune called Avril 14th. Avril 14th is a masterpiece. It's barely 2 minutes long and sounds nothing like most of his discography, but I don't care. It consists only of a prepared piano track playing a delightfully cheerful line. If it's possible to listen to the song and not feel happy, then it hasn't happened to me yet. Just because this song exists, I'm happy Richard left behind that flash drive of material on the plane. I'm far from alone in loving this song, as this is the most popular Aphex Twin track on Spotify, and it's not even remotely close. After drukQs, Richard entered a long period where he seemed to put the Aphex Twin persona to rest. In 2005, he released the Analord series of EPs as AFX, and in 2007 he released 2 EPs, Confederation Trough and Rush Up Edge, under the name The Tuss, Cornish slang for boner. That was just about it as far as original music went. After the extreme productivity of the 90s, it seemed like he wanted some time to calm down. This period would not last forever, though. Back in '96, Richard had planned to release an album titled Caustic Window. However, it ended up being shelved with only 5 test pressings being made. As to why it hadn't yet been released, Richard said that he had just forgotten about, basically. Just got shelved. I wanted to change one track and never got around to it. In 2014, though, one of those copies surfaced on Discogs with an asking price of $13,500. Moderators of the subreddit We Are the Music Makers began communicating with Reflex Records and started a Kickstarter campaign to buy a digital copy of the album. This worked, and the album was finally released as Caustic Window. The physical copy of the album was bought by Notch, the guy who made Minecraft. Fitting. About the crowdfunding campaign, Richard said, "It was just really touching, the whole thing, because I tried to distance myself from my fans, but something like that is so nice. When they reached a goal on Kickstarter and it kept going up, people just wanted to give it money, even though they didn't need to do it, because they were just going to get a download from someone. It's like, oh wow, humanity is nice after all. But it's totally weird just thinking that people like your stuff that much." It seemed as if this spurred him to release some new Aphex Twin music, as on September 19th of that year, after an ad campaign that included blimps and the deep web, he released Syro. Syro has been out for over a decade at this point, and yet I still think of it as the new Aphex Twin album. Normally for albums released after a long break, it can be hard to fit them back into the rest of the discography, but I think this is a really nice addition to the Aphex Twin catalog that more than justifies its own existence. This album would win Richard his only Grammy for Best Dance Electronic Album. By the way, one tricky thing about this album is that the songs don't have normal names anymore, but I'll do my best to say them. For anyone hoping to cover these songs, you're in luck because Richard graciously included all the equipment used in making the album in the physical edition. The title apparently doesn't mean anything. It's a shortened form of Syro, a word that his young son blurted out while listening to it. Part of why this album took so long to make was Richard's insistence in constantly modifying his home recording studios. It's constant. When I look at commercial studios, I think, oh, they're all so nice and tidy. It's because they don't actually write music in them. They're just for producing stuff that's already been written. Whereas if you're writing stuff in studios, it's always changing. You're always swapping equipment around. I just really wish I could bloody keep the same setup for more than about 5 minutes, because then I would actually get good at that setup. I just get bored and swap things out. Fucking ridiculous. The opening track, Mini Pops 67, shows that he hasn't gotten rusty at all during his time off. There's a pulsing beat, nice boppy melodies, and warbled vocal effects that add a rather human feel. Xmas Eve 10 is the longest on the album at 10 minutes. It's a nice 10 minutes though. The main hook is catchy, the rhythm is nice, and the song never manages to get boring. I had assumed it would be a really ambient track, since coming up with enough upbeat ideas to fill a song of that length can be hard, but Richard proved me wrong. Product 29 is a song with really nice sounding percussion. Obviously the melody is good, but the way the programmed drums sound is what catches my attention. It's just a really head-bopping groove. The closer, A Setsana, is, in a way, a more somber, longer version of Avril 14th. 5.5 minutes long with bird chirp sound effects thrown in the background. It sounds like a song someone would meditate to. Ending the album this way is an interesting choice, and I can see why some people might be put off by it, but I dig it. The title, Anastasia, written backwards, is a tribute to his wife. Aww. Syro remains Richard's most recent album as Aphex Twin, although he's stayed very much active. He's released the EPs Collapse, Cheetah, and Black Box Life Recorder 21F. I'm not going to talk about them because, as EPs, there's a lot less that I can talk about for them. I do strongly encourage you to check them out, though. He also recently collaborated with Supreme on a clothing line. I just hope he was paid well. So there you have it. Aphex Twin is a very strange but great musician. His discography is wide enough so that, even if you don't like a release, there are many others that you can check out. Now that I've done a fair bit of talking, I want you to do a fair bit of listening. Go and listen to any one of the albums I've just mentioned. If you like it, congratulations! You have new music to add to your listening rotation. If not, hey, at least you tried something new. If you're still watching by now, I just want to say thank you so much for giving me your time. If you liked what you saw, be sure to like and hit subscribe. I make these videos whenever I can. I always have a ton of fun making them. Hopefully you have as much fun watching them. If you have an idea for a topic you want me to cover, leave it down below. Who knows, maybe I'll get to it. I'm RobbieJ2734. I will see you when I see you next.